After having explained the sketch, let me now go back to Bhagwatam. We may now see how those frivolous narrations of Bhagwatam occupy a unique place of honor in his God scheme of things, of making aware those Paramhansas. Bhagwatam doesn't explain who those Paramhansas were, but of making them aware, those Paramhansas, the Brahma Srishtis of Tartam Vani, about the highest reality of God. Tartam Vani narrates that from the perspective of deluded Paratmas, it becomes clear from verses 18 to 20 of Kirantan 52, that is cited on my page 218 of Tartam Sagar ke Moti. They reveal, these verses, the sequence of amazing happenings from viewpoints of Paratmas who first experience themselves in their delusions as gopis in Brij part of India. It amazes how God has made effort via these verses to communicate with certain truths to them, that is the same Paratmas who are deluded now. And Tartam Vani is trying to explain to those Paratmas that are deluded how to lose that delusion, how to shed that delusion. But in their deluded states, those Paratmas experience themselves as Brahma Srishtis. So, Tartam Vani has to be addressed to the Brahma Srishtis also. Tartam Vani was manifested in our world for the sake of Brahma Srishtis, to connect with them in due time, that is during the period of Jagni. Now let me read those verses, very important verses of Kirantan. काल माया देखी नींद में, आधी नींद माया जोग, ताथे देखाई जगाए के, इतलेसी सबको भोग. It means those gopis first experienced during the 11 years and 52 days of their Kshar existence in Brij area of India, they experienced the Kalmaya, the happenings in the Kalmaya. Though they were very much attracted towards Shri Krishna, it was all in the Kshar world. Adhi Need Maya Jog. Thereafter was played out the Rasleela, but that was not played out in this world, created and controlled by Kalmaya. It was created and controlled especially by Yog Maya. Tathe Dekhai, and now in this last portion, God is planning to show them once again what Aksharatit existence was like. They will resume their Aksharatit existence in the third step. It lesi sabko bhog. These deluded Paratmas will experience all this, Kalmaya, Yogmaya, and then Aksharatit Lok also. And likewise the Brahma Yoga Yukta Atmas and Brahma Srishtis also. Next verse. In Leela ki Atma, so karsi sabe pehchan. Whoever were there, that is those Brahma Srishtis in the forms of gopis. In Leela ki Atma, so karsi sabe pehchan. They will realize after connecting with Tartam Vani that it is talking about themselves. They are the ones through whom the Paratmas had experienced the world, not all others. Avat dode ankuri e tae milsi nisan. Meaning that those gopis in their later incarnations as Brahma Srishtis, Dev Chandraji and Mahamati Prananaji must have been one out of those people. They will get those spiritual truths. It calls it ye taye milsi nisan. They will be able to verify those truths and be sure in their mind and their hearts that those truths belong to them. Avat daude ankuri e taye milsi nisan. Then akhand sukh zahir kiyo, मूल बुद्ध प्रकाशी, दे देखाई जैसे दुनिया पर अक्षरातीत के वासी. It says here the Brahma Srishtis will experience their share of that sukh, of that bliss which is experienced only in Aksharatit Loka. Only when that concern, their spiritually linked Paratma awakens there. And that sukh will also be experienced by Brahma Srishtis. Akhand Sukh Zahir Kyo, they will be able to explain to the all world, look here, that is the greatest of great bliss, Sukha, Ananda, happiness. And how? Kiyo Mool Buddh Prakasi, their Buddhivritti, their Mati, their intellect, they will understand these words of Tartam Vani, and only when that they get enlightened, then they will experience that sukh. Det dekhai jaise dunya. In other words, the Brahma Srishtis are all identical in their looks and constitution to the remaining jivas, but they are internally spiritually connected with Atma and then Paratma. So they look like all other jivas, innumerable, countless jivas, but they still are different. Par aksharatit ke vasi, they are the ones who are going to at one time feel as if they have gone to aksharatit loka. They will not go bodily, they will go in the spirits. Their surta, as Tartam Vani uses the term. These are the three very important verses of Kirtan that explains the sequence in which the Paratmas had experienced in past and shall now experience in the period of Jagni. First, the Brajaleela, next, the Rasleela in Yoga Maya Brahmanda, and third, the Jagni Leela in this Kshara world. And Tartam Vani is going to be the main God's instrument to awaken rest of the Paratmas. Rest of the Brahma Srishtis shall also then experience Paramdham, the Aksharatit Loka. Now, these verses seem to have been addressed by awakened Paratma Sundarbai to remaining Paratmas who are still in a state of delusion. They are deluded yet. It is revealed by them how the Paratmas had experienced after God made them to subjectively identify with respective gopis, that they were enacting Brajaleela and Rasleelas with Sri Krishna. While interpreting these verses, we need to keep in mind what Tartam Vani previously conveys elsewhere in hundreds of its verses. These three verses are a condensed form of what Tartam Vani has explained itself in hundreds of verses. I have shown only these three. There is no time to go through those hundreds of verses. Briefly put, they reveal that those two Leelas took place when in Sri Krishna was present complete consciousness of Aksharatit Purushottama. Tartam Vani even reveals how Purushottama's consciousness descended in steps, not in one go, in steps within Sri Krishna since his birth in Mathura, in a prison cell of King Kansa, right up to the time that he was a just born infant and he was placed beside the sleeping Yashoda, residing in a village called Gokul in Braj area. From the time of his birth right up to the time when he was placed nearby Yashoda, how in steps the higher levels of consciousness descended within Sri Krishna, I don't think any other scripture of the world explains this. That is what makes Sri Krishna understandable as Purushottama, as he declared himself in Gita. Anyway, Sri Krishna then grew up in rural Brij under the care of his foster parents known as Nanda and Yashoda, amidst a cowherd community over 5200 years ago. Those gopis were at the time the wedded women of that community, who showed an inexplicably deep attraction. It cannot be explained. That attraction almost turned to infatuation. Anyway, the community, those gopis, had shown an inexplicably deep attraction for the growing up Sri Krishna, as is vividly narrated in Bhagwatam. But that text, and indeed most others also, do not offer any social logic for their enacting what can be called as indecent acts of Rasleela. Our society doesn't accept these things, that a boy of 11 years and 52 days has such relationships with grown-up women, married women, having children. It doesn't accept this. Even
there was a question about the kings too.
Yeah,
Parikshit.
Parikshit. Yeah, you're right. Even Parikshit had asked the question to Shukadeva. Sir, why are you narrating these such acts of Sri Krishna, whom I consider as Purushottama, as God? He saved my life. Why are you doing that? Shukadeva did not explain. I have read Bhagwatam, nowhere it explains the reasons. It simply says, no, the spiritual aspirant repeatedly read these Leelas. That's all it says. So Bhagwatam doesn't explain. It is Tartam Vani that explains what is the spiritual importance of those two Leelas.
There is a basic of it, I think, Mool Sambandh, we can say. It's a basic.
Yeah, the Mool Sambandh, as Tartam Vani calls it. Nisbat. Anyway, Tartam Vani reveals that it was just beyond the control of gopis to resist their attraction for Sri Krishna. They were made tools for Aksharatit Paratmas, the eternal brides of Purushottama, to have what they had desired ardently. From their heart they had desired. What? To have a taste of perishable Kshara world. Those Paratmas, having lived in that blissful state with the Purushottama, Sri Raji, somehow they happened to express a desire, a very ardent desire. Let us see what Kshara level is like. So he showed them. On the other hand, the consciousness of Purushottama was present within the being of Sri Krishna for a period of 11 years and 52 days of his acts of Brajalila, and also later when Rasleela was enacted. In other words, Sri Krishna, his consciousness of Purushottama was present within the body of Sri Krishna, growing up child, right from his infanthood to adulthood, not exactly adulthood but adolescent age. And the gopis had the deluded Paratmik consciousness within them. In other words, whatever they experienced, the Paratmas experienced in delusion. They were all three in one. But Rasleela, but all this happened in Kshara world. But Rasleela was not enacted in perishable creation of Kalamaya, a power of God that governs Kshar creation, that in which Brajalila was played out earlier. The Rasleela was played out in a qualitatively much different glorious creation, governed by yet another power of God called Yogamaya. As per Bhagwatam, those gopis shamelessly left their families and children to spend a whole night of fun and frolic with Sri Krishna on a river bank. How? They heard Sri Krishna play his flute there. So they went shamelessly. Bhagavat makes it very clear. They intuitively felt that it was a sort of signal for them to go and meet him, that is Sri Krishna. How would the perusal of such frivolous accounts of Bhagavatam, even of childhood days of Sri Krishna, who is said to be God incarnated in human form, how can it really help the cause of highly evolved Paramahansas for whom Bhagavatam was written? It's a legitimate question. The spiritual aspirants are sure to raise this query. Without a reasonable clarification, they would doubt its utility, that is of Bhagavatam. Other texts do repeat similar narrations. Tartam Vani reveals the metaphysical truths hidden below under the frivolous narrations of Bhagavatam. It doesn't explain those frivolous narrations. Tartam Vani explains. In some mysterious manner, that's what I feel, in some mysterious manner, the Aksharatita level conjugal relationship, that is lover and beloved, husband and wife, conjugal relationship eternally existing between the Paratmas and their Lord, the Purushottama, had somehow casted shadows at perishable Kshara level that led to outwardly frivolous and socially unacceptable acts of Rasleela. I feel such truths revealed by the Tartam Vani were omitted altogether by Bhagwatam and other texts in accordance with a definite plan of God, and were allegorically narrated in such a manner as would appear like frivolous, even obscene acts. Ashleel. Why? Was it done to encourage the rational-minded devotees of Shri Krishna to first take a notice of them, that is those frivolous accounts, frown at them, and finally to keep searching for reasonable explanation for them? Yes. Though Tartam Vani doesn't say that, yes, that was what God had most likely wanted to happen. Not finding any explanation from even other scriptures, yet having a firm belief in their veracity, in their truthfulness, such devotees were expected to be filled with much frustration. It suggests that gopis were acting the way they did under powerful but a graceful influence of Purushottama, who was present among them in form of an adolescent Shri Krishna. In other words, that Aksharatita relationship had cast its shadows to influence those gopis to act the way they did when they were present in Yogamaya's creation. Tartam Vani explicitly reveals the following. The Rasleela took place there in order to raise the deluded spirits of Paratmas, to lead them back from the Ksharaloka up to a halfway mark of their journeys back to awakened states of Aksharatita Loka. It is as if they are traveling during the Yog Maya's Rasleela, they as if traveled halfway. But then again, after incarnation, they relapsed. It is clearly said that half the power of original delusion of Paratmas got eroded when their spirits were made to rise up to Yog Maya's creation. Tartam Vani says very clearly, half of that delusion, the strength, power of that delusion got eroded. Finished. That was all done by God, Purushottama. The Rasleela was played out in glorious creation of Yogamaya that is envisaged by me as located between Akshara and Aksharatita Lokas. The scheme of spiritual linkages devised by Purushottama would also have raised spiritual potentials of linked up Brahma Srishtis, because through them remaining half of the distance has to be traversed by them, Paratmas. Would also have raised spiritual potentials of the linked up Brahma Srishtis and the Brahma Yoga Yukta Atmas also to a level just below the Aksharatita level. That prepared them to receive the divine Aksharatita experiences of awakened Paratmas. Them means Brahma Srishtis and Brahma Yoga Yukta Atmas. They also need to be prepared, well prepared spiritually, to be able to receive those highest of high divine experiences descending down from the Paratmas. They prepared them to receive the divine Aksharatita experiences of awakened Paratmas as and when they happened to shed their delusions one by one during the period of Jagni. As for every Paratma, she now has to overcome only half of the strength of original delusion. Tartam Vani makes this very clear. All one can guess from Tartam Vani is that some dedicated past karmas of those gopis could have borne fruits when they were made to be present in divine presence of Shri Krishna, in order to get spiritually uplifted to such levels, such high levels of Yogamayas. What TV says next is highly significant. As per Tartam Vani, those frivolous acts of Bhagwatam were meant to convey a deeper message of God to its Paramahansas. or call them those gopis. The message was expected to be received by them via Tartam Vani, when born much later in Kali Yuga, completely oblivious of God's grace they had received in ancient past, when their spiritual status was raised to Brahma Srishti category. They would then think and also behave like the countless other ignorant human beings. Although Tartam Vani is amenable to perusal by entire mankind, it is really meant for the consumption of the Brahma Srishtis. Like the text of Bhagwatam was, Bhagwatam also was meant essentially for Paramhansas. But it is nowhere mentioned that the Paramhansas are going to be born and they were the same gopis.
But it's already mentioned in Harivansh Puran.
It is later on they will be born as Brahma Munis. Very, very vague statement of Harivansh Puran. But it doesn't talk necessarily in terms of those gopis. It talks in terms of highly spiritual Paramahansas, like that.
The relationship between gopis and Krishna.
That relationship is mentioned, but it appears as obscene acts. Obscene. Ashleel jaisa lagta hai. Anyway, although the Tartam Vani is amenable to perishable by entire mankind, it is really meant for consumption of Brahma Srishtis, like the text of Bhagwatam was. That is the background in which Sadguru's audience with Purushottama needs to be looked at. Even then, it happened with a direct intervention of Purushottama. He was not awakened on his own. It was with direct Purushottama's intervention that it happened that he had an audience with Purushottama.
And Purushottam gives the special blessings.
Special blessing.
Bhagavad even doesn't help him.
Yeah.
Get awakened with the 14 years of journey to.
Yes, it was 14 years long association with Bhagwatam and with his efforts to understand the mysteries of Bhagwatam. After that, Purushottama graced him with his audience.
Perfect.
Similar intervention, although to a lesser extent in case of Mahamati Prananath, it took place. It would be even lesser in case of remaining Brahma Srishtis, since God has already disclosed many truths via Tartam Vani. So now, the Brahma Srishtis and Paratmas have to awaken on their own. Of course, God's grace is there, lying behind all such acts. Dispensation for the Brahma Srishtis in the present is that they should fully grasp its intents, Tartam Vani's intents, in order to awaken the respective Paratmas. God's grace is called for even in the present, although less. It is less conspicuous. Tartam Vani itself needs to be reckoned as His graceful intervention in our world, in our times. It as if exhorts the mankind as follows: let everyone make best efforts to have audience with God, the Purushottama, as time is now ripe for it to achieve that goal. Time is ripe. But it simultaneously says that only the 12,000 men and women of Brahma Srishti caliber are capable of performing this feat. They were even enabled by God during those two Leelas in ancient past to do so during the period of Jagani, extending up to 2878 AD. We are living right spang in the middle of that period. It is therefore Mr. Ramanbhai Patel and Mr. Manubhai that it is essential that now, even after a gap of 300 years, the message of Tartam should reach the entire world. I know you are in that effort. But no one surely knows if he or she is thus enabled by God. That is, it doesn't know who is Brahma, that whether one is Brahma Srishti or not. But that is God's scheme. He is giving an open invitation to everybody to participate in the race. Only 12,000 will win. Every aspirant needs to participate in the race from the same start line, knowing well that only 12,000 would reach the far end. So everybody has to try the best that lies within him or her. Tartam Vani as if issues a wake-up call for the benefit mainly of Brahma Srishtis, even assuring them that they would certainly succeed in fulfilling their long cherished spiritual aspirations. It says that can be done easily, getting rid of only residual half of the original delusion that still hovers over their paratmas, adding that it can easily be done by grasping the spiritual truths relating to their own spiritual attainments of the past as are revealed in Tartam Vani. It is very clearly said. The last few verses I just read out and explained to you all say all that in the briefest of brief manner, although the very message has also been conveyed at good length in several other contexts in the same Tartam Vani.